I call this House to order.
What are you going to do? You're not
trying to give the call.
The Premier's pick for Upper House President survives just 90 minutes in the top job. It's not often we hear of an attempted coup in Australian politics, but Labor says that's what happened in the upper house of state parliament. An ugly battle exploded over who would become president of the chamber. Critics of the Premier say she tried to take control of the upper house, but the move backfired. Here's state political reporter Ashley Raper.
An extraordinary act of defiance, followed by an undignified display of disorder. Last night, Liberal MP Natasha McLaren-Jones claimed the position of president without the support of the majority of upper house members.
I call this House to order and I ask the Honourable Peter Primrose to resume his seat immediately.
No. What are you going to do?
Order!
What are you going to do? You're not elected.
She was the Premier's pick to preside over a house the government doesn't have the numbers to control. It was an attempt to break a deadlock that had halted all business.
This government hasn't allowed us to sit because they've been working out how they can weasel their way through to get to this particular point where we had someone marched into the chair in like a mini coup.
Some within the government questioned the tactic.
I actually have no clue as to what people were thinking with that strategy, which was unsustainable and not consistent with the dignity of this House.
Within 90 minutes, Ms McLaren-Jones was removed in a vote.
Shame. Shame.
And fellow Liberal Matthew Mason-Cox put up his hand.
I certainly didn't believe that it would come to this.
An act of rebellion against the Premier.
I convey to honourable members my deep consciousness of the honour that this House has conferred upon me in choosing me as its independent and impartial president.
Those opposing Ms McLaren-Jones claim she would lack the independence normally expected of the President and rule the House in line with the Premier's wishes. The government wants to make the issue about gender.
When history writes this page, the shame will be on those. Who have sought to remove the most able woman nominated for this job.
How dare they pretend that this is about breaking a glass ceiling that the government does nothing to address in any other context?
The Premier has had ample opportunity to be a champion for Liberal women. Aside from Gladys Berejiklian, there are 13 other Liberal female MPs, but there's currently just one in her cabinet. That could be addressed with a stroke of a pen. There's a ministerial vacancy right now.
That's for me to consider in good time.
For his part, Matthew Mason-Cox has been expelled from the Liberal Party. He went against the Premier's wishes and breached party rules. Ashley Raper, ABC News, Sydney.
And Ashley is still with us. Ashley, why is Matthew Mason-Cox becoming Upper House President such a problem for the Premier?
Juanita, he broke ranks with the Liberals to win a prize role, which was embarrassing for the Premier because her preferred candidate lost. And Matthew Mason-Cox has form. A year and a half ago, he tried to cause a leadership spill against Gladys Berejiklian over legalising abortion. So he's now being punished by being expelled from the party for his latest actions.
So what does it all mean for the people of New South Wales and legislation getting through the upper house?
In terms of numbers, it'll pretty much be business as usual. Yes, the government has lost a guaranteed vote from Matthew Mason-Cox, but the President rarely casts a vote. The issue is, this was a political misstep by the Premier to think that she could impose her pick when the government doesn't have a majority in the upper house. And it's angered a lot of MPs in there. So it'll inflame tensions in a House which is already quite hostile towards the government, which means going forward, Juanita, it may be harder for the government to negotiate and get legislation through because the opposition and some members of the crossbench are likely to be more antagonistic.
Ashley Raper reporting.